Hello everybody, welcome to Player 2 Press Start. I am killagreg. You can find me at killagreg17.
And I'm Dan. You can find me at the Polygon1.
You can find us at Player 2, PLAYRTWO.
And you can find us at player2pressstart.com.
We have a rad website. I'm so stoked about that. You should check it out and let us know how rad it is.
It's at player2pressstart.com.
It's the raddest. Today we are doing our follow-up episode to Destiny. Last time we went pretty in depth in both the story and just the late game content of Destiny. Today we're going to have a little bit more freeform than last time. We have so much to say about Destiny. We really wanted to get it out there that it's a game that we just genuinely loved before we spent a couple hours bitching about it, which, you know, as I'm going over my notes, might not be quite as bitchy as I expected it to be, but there's still going to be a lot of complaining going on today.
Yeah, but that's every episode we do.
No, this is, well, we'll just see how it turns out. But if you want to know just our general impressions about Destiny the game, check out episode 1. This episode, we're going to go a little bit more in the nuts and bolts and stuff that we would like to see improved or wish was slightly different, or just general, bullet points of stuff we liked a lot. Just something to say?
No, I don't.
I'm going to adjust our audio level a little bit because it looks like I'm yelling.
Okay.
So the other major part of Destiny that we never got around to talking about last week was the Crucible.
Okay.
And I feel like it definitely warrants some talking about. So the way the Crucible works...
For people that don't know, the Crucible is the player versus player component of Destiny.
Yeah, like your typical Call of Duty, Halo, Battlefield type multiplayer.
I'd say it's probably closest to Halo because of all like the superpowers and nonsense going on.
Yeah, current Halo.
Yeah.
Not the good Halo.
Yeah, not old school Halo.
The good stuff. So, what makes Destiny's PvP unique is that you basically carry over your one-player character into the multiplayer.
Or aspects of it.
Yes. So, if I'm a Warlock, when I go into the Crucible, I'm still my Warlock. I look like my Warlock. And I have all the powers of the Warlock. So,
and the weapons that you've collected so far.
Yes. So if my power is the Void Walker, I have my Void Bomb. I get to use my special power, and any other powers of the Warlock I get to keep in the Crucible. So Warlocks jump different than Hunters. Hunters jump sort of normal, but they get 3 jumps. Warlocks have this sort of like soaring, floaty jump. So each class still plays to their own unique abilities, like in the single player. Whereas in Halo, everybody's the Master Chief, everybody jumps exactly the same, everybody crouches the same, everybody runs the same, it's all the same. But now in the Destiny multiplayer, Warlocks move faster than Titans, but Titans have more strength, and that all is persistent through the PvP. Now in most Crucible matches, there is a level, what is it? What do you know what the word they use is? Level advantages disabled, I think. I think that's what it is. In most Crucible matches, the level advantages are disabled. So if I'm a 32 and Dan is a 12, we're on relatively even playing grounds.
Yeah, the only difference would be powers that you've unlocked and weapons that you may have access to that you've gotten already.
Right. But the weapons are also gimped.
They're also on their damage and all of that stuff is on a level playing field, but the specific abilities and like clip size and all of that stuff, like the specific nuances of each gun, are retained.
Yes. So, even though they do a pretty good job of leveling the playing field, some people still have a pretty distinct advantage in the Crucible over other people. In general, the Hunter class is pretty dominant over all the other classes. I think the statistic is like, of the top 100 Crucible players, 90% of them are Hunters. There's a reason for that. Hunters are like a good middle ground between Titans and Warlocks in the in the tank department, so like they can take a good amount of damage before they die, whereas warlocks, they go down almost instantly. And their special abilities are by far better than all the other ones. You played a little bit of the Crucible as a hunter. Did you feel like you had any sort of advantage or not?
No.
And do you think that's just because?
Yes.
Okay.
I've played the Crucible. I'm not good at the Crucible. I'm not terrible at the Crucible. Like any other first-person shooter multiplayer game, I'm somewhere in the mid to lower tier. I think I have reaction time issues, and I have never noticed, like, I've never felt like, oh, I'm kicking these people's butts because I'm a hunter. So I don't know. I mean, if that's what the stats say and that's the situation, then I'll certainly believe you. But I've never really noticed that.
Well, I think the big difference is that the offensive powers of the hunter have a little more sustainability than any of the other classes. So, as a warlock, my two possible abilities are the Void Bomb, where I let out a sort of area of effect thing, one giant bolt, and whatever's in that bolt just disintegrates. Or I have the Sun Singer, which means I get like a lot of grenades, and I have the potential to revive myself. The issue with the Void Bomb is twofold. One, the Void Bomb will also kill you when you use it.
If you're within the splash damage.
If you're within the splash damage. And the multiplayer maps are all very tiny. So if you just run on the ground and let out your Void Bomb, 90% of the time you're going to kill yourself. So in order to use it effectively, you have to sort of jump up and then shoot down onto a group of enemies. The issue with that, though, is that I'm a warlock. I have this slow glide up, which everybody knows what's coming, and they'll all focus fire you. So you're sort of like pronouncing yourself ready to disintegrate them, and then they just murder you. And then almost always, just as you're about to, that like split second between when you activate your Void Bomb and before it actually goes off. And considering you only get one or two specials per Crucible, it's a real waste, and it sucks. And the revive is virtually useless. I'm still dead. And yeah, I can bring myself back, but they're usually still staring at you, and they just shoot you in the head a couple more times.
And the amount of time it takes to respawn is very quick.
Yeah.
So that's not really helpful either.
It's virtually useless. Now, both of those are like one time. If they work, great. If not, you're out of luck. The Hunter's abilities are a little more sustainable. So you activate your Golden Gun, and you don't have all day to use it, but you definitely have like a little bit of time.
Yeah, you can take your time to find your shots. If there's anybody around, there's usually an opportunity to get at least one or two people.
Right, and they will and you can just like 1, 2, 3, you get 3 shots with the Golden Gun, just pop, 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 3 instant kills. Or you could be the Blade Dancer, which makes you virtually unkillable, and you just dart around and murder anything in your path.
Yeah, it's a melee ability, and you can basically, I mean, there's sort of different nuances to it depending on what you picked in your skill tree, but you can jump from basically if you're within a group of enemies, it's especially useful because you can jump from enemy to enemy, and each strike is pretty much an insta kill, so you can just go boom, 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 and jump around and wipe out a whole team. And it's very difficult to hit that person if they're in the process of attacking people with the melee ability. It's very difficult to hit them because they move so quickly.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't know if it's just my perception, but I feel like they get some sort of extra damage boost or defense boost as well while they're doing it. It's real hard to take one of them down.
I don't know. I've never felt like I had a defensive boost. I just feel like I'm moving so quickly, it's hard to get. It's hard to do enough damage quick enough before I can get to you. And especially when you're in there's a crowd and I'm jumping around, like things get really hectic. And if you are on the losing end of that, it's very like worrisome because it's like, oh crap, it's going to hell. So
that's my first issue with the Crucible is that one class is far and away better than the other two classes. And when I started playing Destiny, I wanted to play as a warlock. It didn't occur to me, and nor should it really occur to you, that your decision at the beginning of the game is going to affect your ability to enjoy another part of the game later on.
Yeah, it should be balanced, and that's always a difficult thing because people are always going to find a way to sort of cheese the system to get the maximum advantage out of the game for whatever they've chosen. But I don't know. I guess I've always felt like on being on the receiving end of damage from all the different classes. I've never really felt, and I guess I never really paid attention, but I never felt like one character type was dominating.
I definitely do.
Okay.
I've been murdered by more golden guns, and I think I've played the Crucible a little bit more than you have.
That's true.
But I've just been destroyed by golden guns and blade dancers all over the place. Whereas if I see a Titan, it's like, oh no, I got to back up a little bit, but I'm not worried. And if I see a Warlock, it's like, I'm just going to stand here and murder you.
Yeah, I definitely feel like the Hunter super kills are definitely like in your face, and it's very like close and personal. So you definitely know it's happened.
So that's my first issue is that, as a Warlock, I'm already handicapped. The other issue is that while your gun's damage is handicapped, all of the abilities your gun has remain in the Crucible. So if I don't have a good gun, I'm once again at a gross disadvantage. And certain guns are infinitely better. Impact is a really big thing because it staggers people. Rate of fire is a really big thing. So, and also a lot of these guns have random rolls. So if Dan has a Fatebringer and I have a Fatebringer, doesn't necessarily mean we both have the same Fatebringer.
Yeah.
His could have a higher rate of fire, and if everything else is exactly the same except for that rate of fire, Dan, out of 100 times, is going to come out on top more than me.
Another thing is like there are, especially with the exotic weapons, which have very unique abilities. Like for example, there's Icebreaker, and one of the special abilities of Icebreaker is that over time it will respawn your ammunition. And so you have 3 weapons in the game. You have your primary weapon, your secondary weapon, and your heavy weapon. Icebreaker is a secondary weapon, which is usually sniper rifles, fusion rifles, and shotguns. That ammo is a little more rare in the game, in the Crucible. But if you have Icebreaker, you can just turn it on, let your special ammo regrow, and then switch over to something else, and then there you go, you've got special ammo.
And the gun doesn't even have to be active.
Yeah. You just have to have it turned on, and you can. There's obviously a limit to this, but you can carry a lot of guns with you. You can only have 3 like active that you can like switch through without going to the menu on a regular basis. But you can have a whole bunch of other guns with you and switch back and forth if you want to take the time to go through the menu.
So here's my issue with that way of doing weapons. A lot of games have varying degrees of weapons that you unlock over time. Battlefield is the best example. You start out as an engineer, you have a pretty crappy gun, you use that gun enough, you get a better gun, so on and so forth, until eventually you just have the best gun. The only real requirement for you to get better equipment in Battlefield is to use the previous weapon and get experience with it. Just put in time.
Or be Egyptian and spend the money to buy it. To buy, like, the weapon pack.
Yeah, that's also an option. I'm really glad Destiny doesn't have any DLC like that, by the way.
Yeah.
I mean, their downloadable content, the Crota's End, is expensive, but at least there's no option to spend real money to get something in the game. That pleases me. Anyway, so in Battlefield, the only requirement to get better equipment is time. If you put in the time, you get better equipment. It's very simple. In Destiny, every gun drop is random, essentially.
Yeah.
So, just for the sake of argument, or for an example, let's pretend Fatebringer is the best gun in the game. It is the ultimate gun that you can have in PvP. It's not, but just as an example.
Just to give a little context, Fatebringer is a revolver. It's pretty high level. It's some consider it the best revolver in the game. So, just to give a little context in there.
So, I got lucky. I ran the Vault of Glass. I got Fatebringer first time I ran Vault of Glass. This is actually a true story.
Falk of Glass is a end game raid, which has a lot of stuff.
I'm going to assume that a lot of people listen to our first episode of this. I'm going to use a lot of terms. Go back to the first episode. That's cross promotion.
All right.
First time I ran Vault of Glass, I got the Fatebringer drop. I've been using Fatebringer for 3 months now. Dan just got Fatebringer last week, right?
Yeah, like 2 weeks ago.
So, in PvP, if Dan and I were playing against each other, I would have had the better gun the entire time. There is zero way for Dan to catch up to me in equipment department. And that's not fair. So right now, the actual best gun in PvP is Red Death. Now, everybody got lucky, and a certain vendor in the tower sold Red Death recently. But up until that point, some people had it and other people didn't. How am I supposed to be competitive in multiplayer if the best gun in the game is not available to me, and it is completely random whether I get it or not?
I mean, I don't disagree with your argument, but I do think I would counter a little bit with, I think a lot has to do with your ability to think on the fly, the circumstances of the level, the backup you have from other players. I mean, there's like so many factors that go into whether or not you get a kill. I mean, it's not just like, let's compare the stats of these two players and what they have unlocked and their weapons.
And I understand
There's
that,
so much
but
more to it.
And nothing happens in a vacuum, and obviously player skill is a large part of it. But I consider myself relatively good at PvP-type games. And I just felt, for a long time, totally outclassed in the Crucible. Not like, oh, I just am not good at this. Like, I'm shooting this guy with my gun. I've been shooting him for a very long time. He turns around and hits me twice, and I'm dead.
Yeah, I felt that way before, definitely.
Whereas, stuff like that sort of happens in Battlefield and stuff. But when I died in Battlefield, most of the time I didn't feel like I was getting gypped. It was just, some people disagree.
I was gypped all the time.
I felt like I deserved to die. Whereas in Destiny, I'm always like, very frequently, it's like, I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing, I'm getting headshots, and I'm the one who's dead now.
If I'm ever losing in a multiplayer game, I'm getting gypped. So that's my take on
it. So, that's also, in case you're missing the point here, I'm not in love with Destiny's Crucible.
I personally enjoy it from time to time. It's a nice change of pace. It does technically fit into the story. I like the kind of unique aspect of all the single-player stuff coming over into the multiplayer. Like, I think that's fun, and it never really bothered me that. Like, I sometimes wish that I had a different weapon or things had gone differently at some point. But for the most part, it never really bothered me that things weren't totally even. Because I always knew that, there's some other player that's got crap weapons or isn't very good, and I feel like in the end it sort of evens itself out one way or the other. And I feel like by not carrying your level over, but only your weapons and your skill tree unlocks, I feel like that's a pretty reasonable effort on Bungie's part to level the playing field, but still make it, like, interesting.
I think what I would find more acceptable, is if perhaps you still kept your character. So, all your leveling was there, all your equipment was there, but maybe there was like an armory at the beginning of the match where you could choose what guns you use for that match. That way, all the guns are on an even playing field, and then the only difference you have to do is what your class is and your skills.
The whole point of the Crucible in the story of Destiny is that it's supposed to be a training ground for Guardians. And it makes sense that they would you'd sort of all be on the same playing field, but be able to bring your weapons and powers in to sort of test them out and kind of hone your skills. And I feel like that's in the in-universe of Destiny, and I feel like that's kind of what the Crucible does.
Yeah, but I feel like in-universe, like, you would still be you, and that's fine. But, like, in a game of laser tag, like, you go into that room first, and they give you your gun. and then everybody goes out. And you're still you're like, I'm still a big dude. I'm an easy target in laser tag. But at least my gun is the same as the gun that's shooting me.
Yeah, but you're getting... But if we lived in a world, Greg, where we were able to pick up, like, cool laser guns everywhere...
You think I wouldn't use it?
Then you bring in the cool one that you found outside somewhere.
That's a fine point. I don't agree with it, but I get where you're coming from. I just think the game would be better if you were guaranteed to be more on an even playing field.
I'm fine with it as is.
So another thing about the Crucible, 2 more points and then we'll move on. The first one is that there is virtually no customization to it. You played the Halo games. You're used to being able to like pick what map you're on, pick what weapons you want, what powers you want. Dan and I came up with so many custom game types in Halo, and this is totally absent. I mean, Halo made a name for themselves with the Forge, where people could just go into a map and just do whatever they wanted to it.
Yeah.
And this is the opposite of that. It's not even like there's, the customization is lackluster. There is zero customization.
The levels are also infinitely smaller than they were in Halo.
Kind of boring. There's no level that sticks out to me like any in Halo. I mean, there's no Blood Gulch.
The one on Mercury. That one's pretty cool.
Actually, you know what? That's true. The one on Mercury is awesome.
Probably also because we don't go to Mercury. And so it's really exotic. It's like a really exotic. And the first time you go there, you're like, wow, this looks incredible. But also, the level itself is not interesting. It's just the background, which is so crazy looking because you're really close to the sun.
Yeah. But, you think about all the iconic multiplayer maps in Halo. There's not a single one. I don't know the name of any of them. I'm never going to be talking about these multiplayer maps again. They're all pretty lackluster. They give you a couple different options. There's a capture the flag type thing, or it's not even capture the flag, which would be cool, with a flag bearer hopping around and floating all over, blinking everywhere. That'd be fun. There's a territory. There's a team multiplayer. There's a regular multiplayer, and then there's a 3v3 capture the point type new game that they introduced. And that's sort of it, right?
Yeah.
Oh, there's a big map vehicle one too. But it's not very good because the vehicles in this game are lackluster.
Yeah. I think a rush game mode would have been good, but most of the levels aren't big enough to support something like that.
And then there's one giant multiplayer map, and it's so big you never see anybody in it.
Which one's that?
It's the one on Mars. You might not have ever been there. I've only been there a couple times. It's giant and awful.
I'll take your word for
it. So, if Dan and I wanted to just go and check out these multiplayer maps like you could in Halo, we can't do that. We can't just load up a multiplayer game and the two of us go in there and have a sniper fest or anything like that. That is not an option. And that's a real shame.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I agree with most of your Crucible observations. One thing that really stuck out for me, that really annoyed me, especially early on, it's not so much of an issue anymore, but when I first started playing, I had a very, very difficult time telling who was on my team and who wasn't.
I wanted to bring that up too, yeah.
Because in Halo, it's like red versus blue, and you've got a shader on your armor that makes it much more clear who is on your team and who's not.
You don't super obvious in Halo who's on your team and who isn't.
Yeah. In Destiny, that's not the case at all. You look like however you look in the single player, or the PvE, and I don't know. When I've played it more recently, I haven't found that as challenging, but I still struggle with it.
Yeah, there's a light outline of a different color on your opponent, and their name is a different color. But that's it. There's a lot of times where I've shot somebody on my team, or thought somebody was on my team, let them run by, and have them turn around and rocket blast me in the face.
Yeah, as in hectic situations, it can be especially frustrating. When you think, oh, if I had only known that person was on the other team, I could have gotten that kill. Like, I messed it up because I misunderstood what was on the screen. It could be more obvious.
Yeah, it's very frustrating. So I keep having two more points about the Crucible. One other thing they have is something called the Iron Banner, which is a random week-long event where all the level disadvantages of the Crucible are taken off. So,
oh, that sounds miserable.
Really? You didn't know that?
I didn't know that's how the Iron Banner worked. I've only done it once.
Oh.
I was just ignoring. I don't really care that much for PvP in this game.
Interestingly enough, so I've been doing Iron Banner's going on this week that we're recording. It ends today. I've been doing the Iron Banner, and I've done more Iron Banner multiplayer than I have any of the other stuff. And I'm actually having a really good time with it. I don't know if maybe the level disadvantages is what I actually don't like about the multiplayer. Maybe when you actually get in there as a 32, it's a little easier to light people up.
I mean, I am pretty much end game at this point. I mean, maybe I'd do better than I think I would.
Yeah. It wasn't easy, but like once you get past the initial shock of everybody doing so much more damage to you, I find the game type to be a lot more fun. And I leveled up pretty quick. So the way we briefly talked about this last time, the way Destiny's level system works is that as your armor has a certain light level to it. As you accumulate light points, you level up according to that. The only way to be level 32 at the moment is to have all of your armor be light level 36. The only way to do that is to wear the armor you get from Crota or an exotic. You can only have one exotic equipped at any time. So basically, in order to be level 32, every warlock looks exactly the same. Like, one piece of their armor might be different because they chose to do that one as an exotic, but like 90% of every warlock looks exactly identical, and you lose a lot of your identity. The only other way to do that is to get the Iron Banner armor, which is a lot harder to get.
And are those random drops, or are those from the salesman?
They're from the salesman.
Okay.
Lord Salad?
Yeah.
Saladin.
So the reason I've been doing I hate the Crota armor. It looks like I'm like this goth idiot who's really into vampires.
I don't remember if this was just an observation I made to you or on the podcast last time, but definitely everything about Crota looks like something an 8th grader would draw in the margin of his notebook.
It's like, I'm going to draw a rocket launcher and put skulls on it.
And bats.
3 skulls. All the skulls.
Yeah, the rockets are made of bats.
Shoot rockets. I hate the Crota armor. So I've been doing the Iron Banner so I can get the Iron Banner armor because it looks so much more rad. It looks like Viking armor.
The Crota, you can unlock ships, two ships through Crota. They both have like big skulls on them. Like on the ship that you fly through space with, there's a big 3-eyed skull on the front.
It's just the worst.
Corny.
It's really corny, and it looks like garbage. It's not even like this intricate skull. It looks like somebody molded a skull out of clay and stuck it on a gun.
Like they took the model and just like jammed it onto the ship model.
And it's super unfortunate because this is all the best stuff in the game. These are the best hand cannons and the best pulse rifles and all this stuff.
Yeah.
And there's these stupid skulls on it.
And green lights. Anyway.
I think that's it. I think that's all the Crucible.
I think we've milked that topic.
So we're sort of talking about weapons and inventory and stuff like that. Why don't we go a little more in depth on that?
Well, my most the aspect of the guns for me that is most interesting in this game are the exotics. I guess that's sort of assumed because they are exotic and they're difficult to get. But some of them have like game-changing abilities. So to give a little bit of context, there's green, which are the most common weapons, then blue, which are rare. You have purples, which are legendary, and then yellow, which are exotic. In the beginning of the game, you're only dealing with blue and green weapons. As the game progresses, eventually you move on to pretty much exclusively using purple, and occasionally you'll get access to an exotic through a drop, or purchasing it from one of the merchants that comes once a week. Most of the purple legendary weapons, they're great guns. They have solid abilities, and they will serve you well. the thing that's great about exotics is they have like a game-changing ability. Like I mentioned, Icebreaker, and that regrows its ammo. Like that's a are there any other guns that do that, or is that the only one?
That's the only one I know of.
They have like really like, and there's exotic armor which also can have game-changing abilities. Like I've got exotic gauntlets, which when an enemy melees me, I turn invisible. Which like that's game-changing. I've died so many less times now because of that, because I can escape from a situation where normally I would have just been pummeled to death.
And they have really great names. Like the gauntlets he has, the name of them is "Don't Touch Me."
Yeah,
that's really funny.
There's boots called Radiant Dance Machine. Like they put a lot of effort into coming up with funny, clever, interesting names for all the weapons and the armor and the descriptions for them. So like that's a lot of fun. There's another. I'm trying to. It's Gallahorn's exotic, right?
Yep.
So Gallahorn's a rocket launcher that has target-seeking missiles, and then they break into more missiles, which those missiles also seek the target.
Yeah, it's called Wolfpack. That's the ability.
Yeah.
It's the only rocket launcher in the game that has it.
So, I mean, it's like something like that compared to what you've been using for the rest of the game, which is just a regular rocket launcher like you'd be used to in any other game, which just shoots in a straight line and may have some other minor ability. But, like, something like that is drastically different. You've got Red Death, which you gain health by shooting people, right? Isn't that
by killing them.
Killing them?
Yeah.
I mean, something like, especially you can understand why that's one of the best games in PvP. So coming across exotics is always a really fun time.
It's exhilarating. Very rarely do you get an exotic when you're just not excited about it.
Yeah. You can only have one exotic weapon and one exotic armor equipped at any time, so the game tries to keep things relatively balanced instead of, somebody having just nothing but exotic weapons going ridiculous.
Yeah, that's the real drawback to the exotics. That and they just level up so incredibly slow.
You have to earn it with the exotics.
Like most legendary stuff, you can upgrade in like 1 or 2 play sessions if you just go hard on them. Whereas I've been leveling up Red Death. When did Zur sell that? 2 weeks ago?
Yeah.
I've been leveling up Red Death for 2 weeks now, and I still have like several slots to go. It is so excruciatingly slow, and it locks you out of using other guns. I have Icebreaker as well, like Dan does. My Icebreaker is not leveled up because I'm in the middle of leveling Red Death. I can't have both of them equipped at the same time. So it sort of like gimps your playstyle if you want, because you're like stuck leveling it up. You only level it up by having it equipped.
Yep. So exotics are a ton of fun. Zur, which I think we probably mentioned him last week.
I don't know if we did. Why don't we go over it again?
So Zur is this really mysterious alien guy that there's very little information about him that's known. He shows up once a week between Friday and Sunday, and he sells exotic armor and weapons and upgrades for some of that stuff. And you can buy an exotic engram from him, which could potentially turn into exotic items. And he's just a lot of fun, and he's like this weekly thing that you check in on Friday to see what Zur's got.
I'll tell you.
Zur's Day is what some people call it.
I'll tell you my fun Zur story for this week. So at work, we were having a midnight event Friday night going into Saturday. I was asked to work it. I was going to go to it anyway, so it wasn't a problem. But Thursday night going into Friday, I'm like, I'm just going to stay up wicked late so that when I go into work on Friday, I'll be okay for staying up until 5 in the morning. And I got kind of excited because I was finally going to be like at the tower when Zur appears.
And it's at like 4 a.m.
Zur appears at 4 a.m.
Eastern time.
Yeah, Eastern time, 1 o'clock, wherever Bungie's from. Pacific time, thank you. So 3:55 rolls around, I'm like, all right, I gotta go to the tower. Go to the tower. I'm the first person there. So I'm just sort of like milling about, and slowly the tower fills up.
Oh, also we should point out, Zur appears in a random location in the tower each time he comes. So you gotta wander around looking for him.
Right. So it slowly fills up, and it's all just a bunch of people milling around. Like normally when somebody appears at the tower, they'll like run to the Cryptarch or run to the Bounty Guy or run to Eris Morn. Like they have a purpose. It was real obvious that everybody coming into the tower at this point didn't have a purpose yet.
They're just waiting for Zur.
Yeah. So 4 o'clock rolls around, and it was like a frenzy. Everybody at the tower, because at this point the tower was filled up, everybody just scattered. And, like, they would run around, and they would go, like, you can see their names no matter where they are. So, like, you would see a group of people over where sometimes where Zer's here, and you would see other ones here, and, like, I was running around. And then we would all come back to the center and, like, run past each other to go to, like, other places where Zer was. But we couldn't find Zer. And I'm like, oh, this really sucks. You know, like, maybe my information was incorrect, but all these other people are here, too. I'm like, maybe I have to reload, so I, like, left the tower and came back and still couldn't find Zer. I'm looking online, I'm like, where's Zer? No post, nothing. Well, it turns out that Zer comes at 5 o'clock now. Because of daylight savings time.
I don't understand that, though.
I don't either. But
is it later for the Pacific time, too? Is it now 2 a.m.?
It must be 2 a.m. for them now. So it was like me and a bunch of other idiots running around the tower looking for something that did not exist. And I left real disappointed. And then, like, by the time I got up to bed, because my PC was in bed, I looked it up and, like, oh yeah, 5 o'clock. And it was 5 at that point. I'm like, do I go back downstairs and check there again? I'm like, no, I'll just get it. Okay, I'll get it later. But it was real. It was a real exhilarating moment to be sharing that, like, couple minutes with all these random people where we're all just really excited for the same thing. And it was like, what's gonna happen? What's gonna happen? What's Zer gonna have? I can't wait to find him. That was like a real unique and fun experience that you could only really get in Destiny.
Getting back to sort of the nuts and bolts of Zer and why he's so interesting. So he only sells these exotic armor and weapons, but you never know what he's going to have each week. And there's a lot of interesting exotic items available in theory. And people have tried to like figure out the pattern and if it's really random. And there's people that make like predictions on Reddit. And there's a couple people that have been very accurate for a while, and then all of a sudden somebody will totally throw it off, and then like their predictions are out the window.
Well, Bungie claims that Zer is random, completely random. They're like, we have no control over it. Whatever Zer gets is Zer gets. And then this guy Mega Man EX3 or something, he's Japanese. He hacked Bungie's servers and found what Zer was going to have for, like, the next 3 months or something.
Is that what happened? Because I was curious how this guy got this info.
Yeah.
Okay.
And he was, like, spot on for, like, 4 or 5 weeks. And then it sort of got, like, really popular. And all of a sudden, everything Zer sold was completely different for a week. And now he's back on the same pattern again. So they now think that there are two Zers. There's like there's a Bungie controlled Zer that they can like manipulate and stick in when they want to. And then there's like the predetermined stock Zer that sells mostly garbage. So like Red Death, everybody wanted Red Death because now it was like the new hotness in PvP. Nobody could get it. And this frenzy happened where Mega Man was, predicting everything Bungie was doing. So a lot of people think Bungie was like, we got to do something about this. Just give them Red Death. Let everybody be happy for a little while.
And they've done things sort of like that before, where Icebreaker was offered It was offered last fall. The game came out in September. I think it was offered in like November, I want to say.
Yeah.
And then they didn't offer it again for a long time. And then they offered it up 2 months ago.
Yeah, it was like beginning of February, I want to say.
Yeah, something like end of January, somewhere around there. And then maybe 2 weeks later, they offered it again.
Yeah.
And it's a sniper rifle. It's powerful. It has regrowing ammunition. Like it's a hugely important gun. And you could go these long periods of time where you don't have access to this unless you get it from a random drop in the game. And Gjallarhorn, like we mentioned, the rocket launcher, they offered it at the very beginning when Zer showed up. It might have been like the first or second week. I want to say like second week.
Yeah.
And then they have never offered it since. And at the time, everybody was like, I don't need this. Like, some people were smart enough to pick it up, but a lot of people, I think, didn't quite understand what Zer was. The community hadn't really formed yet. People saying you have to go get this, that hadn't really happened yet. And so now a lot of people are kicking themselves because they either couldn't or didn't buy it at the time, and that's never been offered since. And it's every time you play a raid or you do whatever, you're hoping for that exotic drop.
It is literally the only thing I want left in the game.
Yeah.
Everything that's not Jelly Bean makes me sad.
And it has all these funny names, so that's where the Jelly Bean comes from. And so that's Xur.
That's there. And well, we can talk about the tower a little bit more. You were saying earlier that you wish there was more things like Xur.
Yeah, there's a whole bunch of merchants. Some probably more on the merchant spectrum than others. There's like a post office, and there's the Cryptarch, who you find these blueprints basically out in the world, and he unlocks them for you. And it's always, you never know exactly what you're going to get from
Oh,
it.
I know what I'm going to get. Garbage.
Yeah, garbage. That's the joke. So he has items. They mostly suck. There's a gun salesman. Specifically, he's like available from the beginning of the game. A gun salesman. His stuff sucks.
Awful.
Yeah.
Almost immediately. I don't think I've ever gotten anything from the gunsmith.
I bought a couple things like real early on when all you could have access to and could afford were green and blue items. It was fine at that point, but as soon as you get beyond that, he becomes completely irrelevant. I have not checked in on him in a very long time, and it's a shame because he's a person at the tower that sells stuff, and he's completely irrelevant. It gets to the point where the only people that you really care about are the people for the factions who. You spend time doing like side missions for the factions, and then you level up with them. Then you get access to their armor and their weapons.
They're all virtually identical. The only difference is the general color scheme of their stuff.
Yeah, I mean, there's some variation in the weapons. For the most part, though, they're all pretty comparable.
But so there's four factions. There's your Vanguard rep, which is just sort of your generic, like, you're a Vanguard, come see us.
And that's who you start as.
Dead Orbit, which are sort of these like black and white gothy dudes. The Future War Cult, which are Exos, which is sort of like humanoid robots. They're sort of like 70s, like garish colors. It's like yellow and orange and white are their jams. And then there's the New Monarchy, who are I don't know anything about the New Monarchy.
They're very red.
They're like a regal red. But I don't know what their getup is. I don't know why they're there.
Well, each one has, and not to go too far down the rabbit hole
here.
Well,
I do want to make a better point. So if you know what they do, let me know.
Well, I mean, I know what each one of their backstories is.
What's the New Monarchy's backstory?
The New Monarchy. So there's like this, basically like a council that runs the tower, and they basically want to abolish it and basically put an elected figurehead, or not figurehead, like an elected monarch. In place to have one person ruling the tower instead of like this council of people.
Okay.
Dead Orbit, they want to basically give up on Earth and go find a new home. And Future War Cult believes that there's going to basically be no end to war, and they want to go on the offensive.
Future War Cult is wicked cool, by the way. Like they have this backstory about like they have a time machine and they send Exos through and stuff. It's really interesting. We can pause for a second. Go on.
Yeah, that's fine.
No, just keep talking.
Yeah, we can keep talking. All right, fine, we'll pause it.
All right. So
factions.
So the factions, yeah. So by doing normal, like everyday Destiny stuff, you get Vanguard points. As you get Vanguard points, you can buy stuff from your Vanguard rep, and every now and then, when you level it up, they'll give you like free Vanguard fun stuff. You also have the option of wearing some sort of equipment from one of the different factions, and then any of your Vanguard points will go to that designated faction instead of your Vanguard rep. And then you get faction-specific guns and clothing. So, Dan and I, we both want an all-black shader that you can only get from being part of the Dead Orbit faction.
So shaders, just real quick. Your armor has a default appearance. They all look different. They all have their own weird thing. You can look very cobbled together depending on where you've gotten your armor from. So the game offers shaders, which offer a more unified color palette for your entire outfit, armor setup, I guess. Some of them are really goofy and dumb, like they're all purple and pink. Some of them are really cool, like they're kind of silvery and metallic. There's a whole bunch of options, and they're often just random drops. And Dead Orbit has one that we're trying to get, which is all black, which would just look super terrific.
It would just look great. I already have a Dead Orbit chest piece, and it looks just the coolest. So, I really wish that being part of a faction had some other effect than just sometimes you get random stuff from them. When you're doing patrol missions, so sort of during the open world aspect of Destiny, you can go down to one of the planets, you enter what's like called a patrol, and there's like little beacons that you can pick, and they'll give you patrol missions.
It's like a small side mission.
Yeah, like kill 15 dudes in the area, or go over here and scan this, or something like that. And most of the people in the tower will give you patrol missions. It'll be like, oh, the shipwright, she needs more such and such for the hyperdrives. Can you kill 100 dudes and rip it out of them? And the future war cult will give you some, Dead Orbit will give you some, stuff like that. I think that would have been a really good opportunity where, like, if I joined Dead Orbit, have Dead Orbit specific bounties or patrol missions and stuff. Have, like, a reason to be part of each faction on top of just, I want to look all black.
Yeah, there's a sense, unless you want specific items that either the Vanguard or one of the three factions have, or Iron Banner or something, like, unless there's some specific item that you want, there's almost no reason to pick one over the other than color preferences or something like that.
Yeah.
And I definitely agree with your point. I wish it was a little bit more, it went more to the heart of Destiny and, like, had more ramifications for which one you chose. And it just doesn't matter. And the only reason we picked Dead Orbit is to hopefully eventually get this black shader.
Yeah, like, if I had my choice, I would do the Future War Cult, because their backstory is really cool. Excuse me. But their armor's stupid looking, so Dead Orbit it is.
Yep.
So, you were talking about the different vendors and stuff. Xur comes once a week. The Iron Banner vendor / representative, he comes every now and then.
That's like once every 1.5 months.
Yeah, something like that. I've participated in 2 Iron Banner things since I've actually cared about Destiny. But that's sort of it. Like, there's no other special events at the tower.
There was at one point they had the Queen's emissary, the Queen of the Reef, sent basically an ambassador to the tower. And you could earn faction points with the Queen the same way you could with one of the other factions. She had her own bounties, she had her own gear and weapons, and that was kind of a brief thing that they did.
Very strange that they haven't done that again, right?
Yeah, and it hasn't come back, and it was like a couple of weeks. It felt like it was relatively brief.
This was before my time.
Yeah, this was earlier on. I feel like this was like last fall. It was relatively early on in the game coming out. Things like that happening more often would make the game like more engaging, and there's really no reason not to do it. All of these different vendors they have, instead of having them all there all the time and they all suck, have them appear randomly or on a schedule like Xur and have them have good stuff so that you want to go to them and want to check them out and have like more stuff to look forward to, more reasons to check in on the game, and more things to work towards.
Yeah, I don't think it'd be very hard. So, like, there's this lady, we call her the bag lady. She sort of hides in a corner, and she's supposed to be like the tower seamstress.
Yeah, she has like this dumpy apartment in a corner.
So she has shaders available for you to buy from her, and also banners. Like, each person has a sort of like banner behind their name when they set up fire teams and multiplayer and stuff like that. But her selection always sucks.
And
it's relatively the same.
Yeah, there's not much that changes from week to week.
Especially the shaders.
Yeah, and that's a real disappointment, because there are a lot of cool shaders, and it's just, unless you get them from a random drop, or there's one you're looking for from a faction that you get eventually, you're out of luck.
And I feel like they could just do away with her entirely, and have her appear once a month, stay for like 3-4 days, have cool stuff, and then disappear again. And she would have just as much meaning and impact as she does now, if not significantly more so.
Or they could just do it where it's like even that schedule, even if she only had one shader, and she was like, I spend all this time working on this shader. I hope you enjoy it, Guardian.
That's a good bag lady impression.
Yeah. There's another there's the shipwright who you can buy ships from, but none of them are interesting for the most part. They're boring.
Awful.
Does the shipwright also sell sparrows?
She does, and your Vanguard Weapon Master will also sell sparrows.
And those sparrows quickly become irrelevant as well. Those are your speeder bikes in the game. And it's like there's all these people that sell stuff, and you don't want any of it, and they're all boring.
And they're all there.
Very quickly. There's very little reason to check them out. There's very little reason to go interact with them. So you're constantly going back to the tower. And realistically, there's almost nothing to do there.
There's very little to do there. And it feels unalive. There's other players there. I think 16 people can be loaded in at once.
Something like that. 16 or 20.
16, 20, something like that. So people are like running around and doing stuff, but nothing ever changes in the tower. It's all very static. And there's a lot of dead space where I don't know if they're like planning on putting things there in the future or what, but like there's where the Iron Banner guy sets up shop. It's like this beautiful promenade. And usually there's like a gate there that you can't get through. But when he's there, the gate opens, you can run through. He occupies this very tiny little spot over, like, up there on the right. The entire rest of it is totally empty.
Nobody else shows up there.
Yeah, and you feel like there's supposed to be something there.
Was the Queen's Emissary there at
I
one
feel like
point?
she might have been, but I did not play when the Queen's Emissary was there.
That must have been where she was located, I guess.
Well, something Dan suggested, and I think this would be a great place for this, is that add more social aspects to the Crucible, like being able to spectate Crucible games. I'm sorry, more social aspects to the tower, like being able to spectate Crucible games and stuff. Like, it would be really cool if there was a screen up or something in that promenade where while the Iron Banner's going on, you got the guy running your Iron Banner over here, and then across the way, you could, like, spectate Crucible games or something. Like, make the Iron Banner like that stupid thing from Harry Potter where all the wizards come from all different schools.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, make it a huge event. It's like, the Iron Banner's this week. Are you ready for the Iron Banner? Let's watch these high competitors play the Iron Banner.
Yeah, and make it like almost like a league.
Yeah.
Or show like highlight reels from the past week, or like something like that, or let people like upvote the coolest things that they've seen, something like that.
Yeah, like go to the Iron Banner tab on Bungie.net and vote on the favorite clip or upload clips or something.
You could have sparrow races. You could even if they were NPC sparrow races, you could like watch those or bet glimmer on them or something. Like if there was like some sort of mild gambling aspect, it would just make it like fun to goof around. It'd be cool if you could challenge other players there to like play space darts, as Greg mentioned earlier. To me, not on the podcast.
There's even like in the tower, there's this bar in the bottom, like sort of like in the mechanical bay.
Yeah, like in the hangar.
It sort of looks like the type of place that like the plebes would hang out. Like you're a guardian, you're like this elite thing running around space and busting heads. But like there's got to be somebody who fixes your ships.
Yeah, like the grease monkeys.
Yes. There's like this little bar deep down in the innards of the mechanical bay. Nothing happens there. It's just there.
There's NPCs that sort of wander around, and if you get close enough, they'll just say random things to you. But they're all irrelevant. They're all boring. They all don't matter. And it's just there's all these areas where it just feels like a complete waste of an opportunity.
Yeah, and the other tower related issue is that in order to do any like record keeping type stuff, like paperwork, like turn in bounties, buy guns, turn in things from the Cryptarch, see if Eris Morn has anything for you. You actually have to physically go to the tower, which is fine, but it's an extensive load time. And the way the tower works is that Bungie creates a new tower for every, whatever we said, 16 or 20 people. Sometimes, if you're the first person loading into one of these towers, it can take an exceptionally long time for the load to happen. You'll just be floating for a while, and then sometimes it'll even like go to the black screen, and you'll hear the tower noise, but it takes 30 seconds to a minute for the tower to still load in, and that's infuriating. especially when all you want to do is just quickly like throw something at the Cryptarch and go back to space.
Yeah, inefficient is how that seems.
Yeah. And Dan and I were comparing it to Mass Effect. Mass Effect has the Citadel, which is similar to the tower. It's a hub where you can buy stuff and talk to people and get missions and all this stuff. But at the same time,
it feels so much more alive.
It feels so much more alive, and you don't have to go there for everything.
It's also funny because all the people in there are NPCs, whereas most of the people in Destiny are actual other people running around.
Yeah. But you have a terminal in your ship in Mass Effect, and it's like if you want to turn in a mission or something, you just walk next to your terminal and you turn it in. You don't have to go to the Citadel to do all that stuff. And I feel like Destiny really needs like some sort of computer in your ship, or even to let you run around your ship. I feel like the ships are a real missed opportunity. Like, it's cool to watch them float around and stuff, and I really like the loading screens where, like, so when I load up a game, my ship's floating in space. When Dan joins my fire team, his specific ship, like, flies in behind me.
Yeah, it swoops in.
And it's cool. It's like you are building this little fleet to go, like, on adventures together. Which actually is something I didn't talk about in the Crucible. This is so minute, but such a good effect. When you load into the Crucible, all 6 people on your team sort of, like, beam in at the same time, and like it's super duper epic. So like they all appear, you look like a team, they all look super badass, and like one of them plants a flag in the ground. It is a rad little cutscene that goes a huge way on establishing like a feel to the Crucible.
And it also lets you like real quick see your teammates, which doesn't really help you identify them when you're playing, but it's just nice. It's like, oh, that armor's really cool. Oh, that guy looks really neat. Like it's just it's a nice like little show.
And it's like fun to find yourself and like, wow, I look really cool in that. Like,
and it's like, am I the guy holding the flag? Because you know everybody's gonna see you.
Yeah, that's a real cool moment. I almost wish they did more. Like show the enemy team, do like a flyby of the like arena. Like, that would all be really cool. I wish they did that more, but, I mean, that moment is real, real cool. I say cool a lot there. It's an easy word. Do we have any more to discuss about the tower?
I guess my general takeaway is that it has potential. I like the concept. I don't mind going there. And, like, the chores to like, trade stuff in, I kind of like it because it's like when you're done with something big, everybody just kind of goes there, you take care of your business, and then you move on. And I like that sort of like that little bit of downtime. I just wish that there was more to do there, whether it's a social aspect or whether it's like a marketplace thing. I wish the people that sold stuff were relevant to the game, and they're not. They're a total missed opportunity because the game, they want you to rely so much more on random drops and running levels, not just buying stuff from merchants. And like I get that, but some people like there are people that want to grind the game, and there are people that don't. And I don't know, make this stuff really expensive. Like your glimmer cap is like 25,000 glimmer. Make a really nice, like make an exotic gun from somebody else or exotic armor or something. Not just from Xur. Make it cost 25,000 glimmer. That's a huge deal to spend all your money
in installments or something.
Yeah, like there's a lot of opportunities there to make these people more dynamic and interesting, and there's more opportunity for events. I mean, they've shown that they've done it; they have the capacity to do it. It's just, I just wish it was like more of a hub than it is. It's more of a chore than a hub, and I want it to be a hub.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. And also, like a lot of times, you and I will go, and I'll have one thing to turn in, Dan will have like 15 things to turn in, and the other person just stuck there twiddling their thumbs with nothing to do.
Or jumping around in a circle. That's
more frequent.
There are some actually super interesting social things that have come out of the tower. There's some great YouTube videos, because this is totally stupid, but one of the things your character can do, you can salute, you can sit down, you can point, and you can dance.
The dancing is the best.
The dancing's funny. The novelty's kind of worn off at this point. But I've actually seen those YouTube videos where people have a conga line where everybody's doing the exact same dance, and like there's 15 people or something in a row. Like, to get that together and organize it is just, that's great, and it looks so funny. Because it's not an easy thing to get going, and so somebody had to do it, somebody had to record it, and it's just, it's hilarious. So there's some opportunities for some funny social stuff. It's really fun to pick a random person and just, like, chase them around to the tower.
That is, and then it's best.
They try
freak
to
out.
They try to lose you, and they can't. And then they just decide to go about their business and leave, and it's funny.
Whatever you do, you just follow them and dance on them.
Yeah.
Until they freak out. So we were going to talk about each individual strike, but I feel like this is getting a little lengthy. So why don't we just talk about strikes in general? And specifically, I want to talk about the bosses of the strikes.
Okay. Do you want to just give like the brief description of what a strike is?
Yes, go ahead.
I was asking you if you wanted to.
Sure.
Okay.
So a strike is a preset mission for 3 guardians to do together. And it's one of the few things in the game that has like actual real matchmaking that is PvE.
I would describe it as like a shorter but more difficult story mission.
Yeah. Or like a significantly easier, less complicated raid.
Yeah.
So each strike works almost exactly the same. You run a level to get to an end boss, and there are several stop gaps in the middle. Sort of like a cluster of enemies that you can't pass until they're all dead. There's a few little like mini bosses, like there's a tank in one level. Is that it?
Yeah, there's a couple different tanks.
There's a walker in another level, stuff like that. But as a whole, each strike is predominantly the same, just on different planets with a different end boss.
But the formula is pretty much the same.
But the formula is the same. So each end boss is pretty unique and cool in their design style. However, they all sort of act and die the same way. They're all really dumb and are huge damage sponges.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, they all have their quirks and their nuances, but that's essentially the gist of it.
Right. Like one is a bigger moon ogre, and you just shoot it until it's dead. One is a bigger, what are they called? Elites. What are the fallen version of elites? Captains. One's like a bigger captain who takes more damage. One is a more important wizard who takes more damage. One is a bigger
Martian Cabal guy
who takes more damage.
Takes a ton of damage.
One is a bigger servitor who takes more damage.
Which is a big floating mechanical eyeball.
And the biggest issue is that strikes are the most efficient way to grind experience, glimmer, and engrams.
Item drops.
And they are all pretty boring bosses. None of them are a challenge. They're just sort of a marathon.
And it gets to a point where it's like you just want to do it as efficiently as possible to complete it for the end of the level reward.
Right.
And really the only way it ever becomes challenging is so you can pick different levels to do the strike at, and depending on what your level is, it can either be way too easy or super challenging to the point where you can't even do it. The level 30 strikes have a bunch of modifiers similar to the skulls in Halo. And those are significantly or potentially significantly more challenging, just because of all the modifiers and how it affects the whole way it plays. But by and large, they're not that difficult. You're just running it as quickly as you can to get through it.
There's a bigger issue in games that pertains to this, where like the difficulty and the fun levels have trouble balancing themselves. The strikes are a real chore. Not because they're difficult, but because they're just time-consuming and lengthy. And that's not a ton of fun.
Yeah, it's like the end reward is so much higher than taking your time to kill the enemies that you don't necessarily need to kill. Like, there's a lot of superfluous enemies that you can skip in a lot of these strikes. There's the mid-level point where you gotta kill something to move forward, and it's like you get stuck there and you have to do that. And then it's a race to the end, and then it's a race to either kill the boss as quickly as you can, or do it as easily as possible by cheesing it.
Yeah. What do you think about cheesing things? But by cheesing, we talking about like using cheap tactics to just finish something.
Yeah, and sometimes it almost becomes required.
Yes. And a lot of the Nightfall strikes, which is the level 30 strike Dan was talking about.
With the modifiers.
There's very few that you can do legit. You almost have to cheese all of them because it's so unfairly stacked against you.
This is something that I've wanted in games for a long time, and I haven't gotten it yet. I've wanted it in Halo for a very long time. I want it in this game. I don't want enemies for something to be more difficult, I don't want them to simply take more damage. I want them to be smarter. I want them to use better tactics and think better. And I'm not a game programmer. I don't know how difficult that is. I'm sure coming up with the AI is difficult enough. Some of the enemies in this game have relatively good AI sometimes, like wizards who kind of float around. They use they're pretty good at taking cover when it is necessary,
right,
to the point of becoming like obnoxious. Like, damn it, he did that again.
They have a shield, and they'll keep blasting you until their shield goes down, and then they'll hide until their shield recovers.
They do a real good job of hiding. There's a lot of enemies that are just like the lower level ones that are just stupid, and they'll pop their head out to look around, and that's when you get the headshot. And they're so robotic in the way they do it that it's dumb. Most of the enemies are very, very predictable. I don't want them to be.
The weird problem, though, is that those enemies that have the shields that then hide when their shields are down are infuriating. I mean, they're like the most difficult enemies in the game. And sometimes you can... this has happened to me frequently. I run out of bullets on them because it takes a lot of bullets to get their shield down. And then they hide. I can't, maneuver around them fast enough to continuously, pump bullets into them to keep the shield down. Shield recovers. I waste all my bullets getting the shield down. They hide. Yeah. And then I'm out of ammo. And then what am I supposed to do?
Yeah.
There's got to be a happy medium. They can still hide, but they can't recover their shield or something.
So it's stuff like that makes me perfectly content to cheese, because I want smarter enemies, not just damage sponge enemies. And there are a lot of moments in Destiny where the combat is a ton of fun, and that's when I don't want to cheese. I want to have fun, I want to play, I want to shoot stuff and have a good time. And then when you run into something like that where it's just difficult but not fun, that's when I'm perfectly content to just cheese it to get past it.
Well, I'm specifically interested in how that pertains to the Crota raid. Because we both agree the Crota raid is bad, right?
It's fine. It's not as elegant as Vault of Glass. And as a DLC that we had to pay extra for, I feel like they really needed to step up their game for it and didn't, and that's a disappointment. I wouldn't say it's bad. It's just it's hard to take the whole thing seriously because, like I said, it all looks like a goofy drawing.
There's a large part of the Crota raid in the middle where you're supposed to build a bridge, and one person goes over. Each person individually goes over until you can build the bridge on the other side, and then you kill a bunch of stuff with the sword. 99% of the time, people just cheese that.
And there's ways to strategically reuse either the Warlock's ability to respawn, or everybody it's called wiping, where everybody kills themselves. And there's ways to do that strategically to take advantage of the situation and skip things or get past it more easily than you would have otherwise.
Right.
Especially in Crota.
So, in order to do that on normal, which is when Dan and I do most of the time, you need to have a Warlock who has this revive ability. Once, Dan and I did the Crota where there was no Warlock. So we actually had to do this part of the game legit. It was difficult, but it was a lot of fun, and it was kind of exciting, and it was oh no, are we going to do it? I don't know. That was an exciting time. I had a lot of fun doing that.
And that was the first time I'd actually done it the way you're supposed to.
It was the only time I've done it that way.
Cheesing it.
That was a ton of fun, and that was the time that we didn't cheese it. So if we legit did Crota, would that whole raid be more fun and interesting?
It's kind of a disjointed raid. It's sort of like you just move from one random area to the next, whereas Vault of Glass feels a little more fluid and coherent. It feels more unified. Crota just feels like vignettes that have not really any connection to one another. But on the same token, I'm frustrated that I can't get the weapons and armor that I want. So that's why I want to get through these things faster. Or I need material to level up those items faster. And I'm frustrated that I'm not getting it. So part of it's like rebelling against Destiny and Bungie, and that's why I cheese.
Yeah, I prefer the other thing is that, like, even when you cheese things in the Vault of Glass, most of the time it's still a challenge. Like, when you cheese the Templar, you're still, like, have to avoid his shots. You still have to make sure you're shooting oracles. There's still somebody down, like, in the fray with the relic, like, you know, killing stuff. So when it comes to Vault of Glass, even when you're cheesing stuff, there's still, like, a real element of, like, skill and challenge. With Crota, it's like you're just breaking the game.
Yeah, and especially when it comes to one thing I would say when it comes to cheesing, there's two ways to view cheesing. I mean, there's the people that just follow along and just do what they're told, but the people that like understand cheesing and the difference between that and actually doing it correctly, it's like you have to be an expert to know how to cheese. You have to know why. You have to be able to first of all figure out the cheesing or learn it from somebody else, and you have to understand why that's better than doing it the other way. And then how to successfully cheese. Because sometimes, like, cheesing is still not necessarily easy. Like, you hide up on a rock for one of those strikes, and it's like you're constantly, like, still kind of in danger, still
right,
kind
and
of falling
you have to
down.
know, like, okay, I'm relatively safe up here, but when the vanguards appear, vanguards, what are the snipers?
Vandals?
Vandals. When the vandals appear, they're going to get me. I got to keep an eye out for vandals. When the servitor appears, he can get me. I need to keep an eye out for the servitors. So, like...
It's easier, but I wouldn't say it's easy.
Yeah. Alright, I think we should head toward wrapping this up. Let's talk a little bit about transparency in Destiny and the community, because I think they go hand in hand.
There's essentially no transparency.
Yeah, there's all sorts of things in Destiny that are hidden from the users. Exotic weapons have hidden perks. They don't tell you anywhere that guns with a higher impact are better in the Crucible. They don't tell you that this gun's good for the Crucible. I don't know if they planned on relying for the community to do all this stuff, or if the community has just taken the mantle of this because nobody else did. But, like, there's so much in Destiny that without a good support system, nobody would ever know, and you would never figure it out.
There's a guy, his name's, I think, Dirge, right? He's the guy on Reddit who is the Bungie employee. He's basically their spokesperson and point of contact. And I feel like he was more vocal earlier on, but less so now. But this whole relationship between the community and having to, like, basically build a community ourselves, Bungie should have done that. They should have set it up so that there were spokespeople that were sort of like the connection between the company and the community who were guiding us through all of this, much more so than they have. I feel like it is intentional on their part to make us figure this out, but I also feel like that's a very lazy, cheap approach to just say, they'll figure it out.
Yeah.
Like, we're not going to do it for them. They'll learn it. And, like, a small part of that is interesting, but it's also very frustrating.
They used to have that with the Halo games. I forget what his name was. The guy with Mr. Chief. Was his name Mr. Chief?
No.
I don't remember. But, like, you know, over the years, a lot of people had that. Like, Capcom had Seth. Wow, I can't believe I'm forgetting his name. It's late. I'm a little tired.
Capcom had a guy.
Capcom had a guy, had Seth. Xbox had Larry Herb, Major Nelson. Like, these people need to have that company spokesperson that is a liaison between the two of them. And Destiny more than any, because there's just so much stuff that nobody has any clue about.
And the problem is, like, there's no way to access it in-game. There's Grimoire cards, which give you background story, but that doesn't really help you with the game itself. There's all these there's so many load screens where they could have had you either looking at the Grimoire cards to get story, they could have had pop-up tooltips. There's so many nuances to this game and so many places where they could have put that stuff. there could have been like every gun could have had an advisor tab, like what this gun is good for, where you should be using it, when you shouldn't be using it, maybe how it's changed since when the game launched, like things like that. Like, this shotgun was, not so good early on, but now it's like super terrific in player versus player, but not player versus environment. Like things like just an in-game advisor would be super terrific.
Yeah.
But there's really nothing like that. And I distinctly remember there was a thread I sent you from Reddit about Vault of Glass and all these like really particular nuances. And we've run that raid like 50 times now.
Right.
Maybe a little bit less than that, but
I've run it
significantly
more than that.
And like there's things that you didn't know, and you're more into like the nuances of the raids than I am.
Yeah.
And some of the things I knew, some I had no clue, and none of it's obvious.
Like, just as an example, there's something in the Vault of Glass called oracles. Oracles are very hard to kill, and if you don't kill them in a certain amount of time, they kill everybody.
It's like a ball of light that floats there.
Yeah. So
they appear and disappear.
We were talking about Fatebringer earlier. A lot of the weapons that you get from the Vault of Glass have something called Oracle Disruptor. It is a specific perk of those guns that are designed to do extra damage to oracles.
To make them easier to kill.
Right. Fatebringer is my favorite gun in the game. Fatebringer has Oracle Disruptor. I'm like, alright, I'm just going to use Fatebringer on these oracles. But I found myself dying to the oracles all the time. I was not killing them fast enough.
Fatebringer has a pretty large clip for a revolver.
Yeah.
Which makes you think, oh, like, I'm going to be way better off using a revolver for this, and I won't waste time reloading.
Right.
But?
Well, as it turns out, hand cannons have a 30% reduction in damage against oracles. So even though I had Fatebringer with Oracle Disruptor, I would have been better off with literally any other gun I had. But there's no way to tell that at all. This person on Reddit had to inform people of that.
And he had like 20 or 30 different points about the raid, all of them helpful. Yeah. And all of them super obscure that you would never pick up just by playing on your own.
Right. And, I mean, why would you put... And maybe they did this on purpose. And part of the raids are figuring them out. Like, there's a certain element to that. Like, when you first start a raid, there's a mystery element to it. But why are you going to put Oracle Disruptor on a gun that's bad against oracles?
Like, they're tricking you.
Yeah.
And the other thing, too, that especially with the raids, but in general... I feel like there's a lot of different people coming to the table with this. Like, some people are a little more MMO-ish. Some people are a little more first-person shooter-ish. Like, there's little kids, there's adults, there's, like, the whole gamut of players, I think, come to the table at Destiny. Some people have, not some people, everybody has their strengths and their weaknesses and the things that they enjoy doing in a game like this and the things they don't enjoy. Some people need more hand-holding than others. Some want no help at all. But the game basically says, it's like, good luck.
Yeah.
And that's your only option. And I find that like lazy game design. Because for somebody, perhaps maybe like me, or like if you take me as a player and then make me like 8 years old or 10 years old, I would get really frustrated not knowing this stuff and having like no real outlet to find this. Like some people need more hand-holding.
Yeah. I just wish that Bungie was a little more transparent with all sorts of stuff. And even with their updates, like, people want so much stuff out of these games, and it's because they've created an impassioned fan base. But, like, just as an example, every single Destiny player wants a bigger inventory. Everybody wants this. And Bungie hasn't even once addressed it. Just address it, one way or another. Be like, look, guys, we know everybody wants bigger inventory, but we wanted to create an environment where you have to make hard decisions about what guns you want. Or, hey, everybody, we know you want a bigger inventory. Wait till next patch. We're working on it.
Or wait till the sequel.
Right.
But the thing is that there's aspects of the game which make that stupid. Like, you can make 3 characters and have, 3 times as much vault space.
Yeah, I have a third character right now where I don't play it, but his entire inventory is full because I'm using him as an additional vault.
Yeah. You have a ship in the game that you fly around in. I would like to think that there's a cargo bay there. I would like to think that you could probably store a lot of armor and weapons in there. No. that doesn't expand. Like, wouldn't it be really awesome if legendary ships had more vault space?
Yeah, your ship has, other than aesthetic, has zero to do with anything. It'd be really great if there was a stat on there, like locker. Like,
Yeah.
how much stuff can I put in my locker on my ship?
Yeah.
And even if that was stuff that, like, you could bring with you, but you didn't want, like, with you all the time. So, as it stands right now, you can use the app, but I don't really want to discuss that. If I wanted to pull stuff out of my vault, I have to go to the tower, get in the vault, pull it out of the vault, go back up to space. It'd be really great if I could just, like, load 4 extra things onto my ship. I don't need this right now for this mission, but I might need it for my next mission, and I don't want to go back to the tower to get it. But there's none of that.
Yeah.
And Bungie could just address it. That's all I really want. I just want Bungie to address these things.
And
Like, hey, House of Wolves, new vaults, can't wait. See you then.
And there's definitely a change in the way games work now. Because 20 years ago, there was no community like this. There was no dialogue between the developers and the players. It didn't exist. You got what you got, that's what you have, and that's it. Especially with a console game. I mean, old PC games, in theory, you could get patches and stuff, but with a console game, that's what you get. You're done. Now it's different, and there's, like, the second it comes out, they want 1,000 new things. And I'm sure it's very frustrating to have people constantly complaining that they want this or they want that. But, like, people are thinking about this stuff all the time because they love your game, and they want to be involved, and they are trying to make it better, not as, like, an insult, but just as, like, when you get that many people playing, you're going to get people with good ideas.
Right.
And it's a shame that, like, they never address it, you know? Like, you could go on the Destiny subreddit right now and read 100 different threads and find 100 different wonderful ideas that you'll never hear anything about, even though they're terrific ideas. That feels like kind of a waste. It's just kind of a shame. It would be nice if there was more people at Destiny involved, or at Bungie, that were commenting on this stuff and being more involved. Like, yeah, that's a really great idea. We're going to bring that back to the development team.
They haven't even announced a date for House of Wolves, the next expansion, yet. Which is what everybody just wants so hard. And maybe they're working on it and they're like, we don't know when it's going to be done, and that's fine, but say, we don't know when it's going to be done. We'll let you know. But they were like, it's going to be out sometime in the spring.
Yeah.
Just be like, hey, we're shooting for May 22nd. Hope to see you guys there. But, this process takes some time. Who knows? Just be transparent. That's all I'm asking.
People just want to know.
People just want to know. Let's wrap this up.
Do we have any other topics on there? Is there anything else? Did we cover everything?
Nothing terribly relevant. Yeah, I think we nailed it all.
If you could pick one thing to have in the future, whether it's House of Wolves or the next game, like, what is the one thing that sticks in your craw more than anything else with Destiny?
Having to go to the tower for everything. I would just adore.
Too many load screens.
Let's go more specific. I want your ship to have meaning, and I think that entails a lot. Have a locker on your ship, have an armory on your ship, have a computer on your ship so you can turn in bounties and stuff. Be able to utilize the ship as more than just something cool on your loading screen. That's what I want.
I think what I want is for the game to be a little bit more of like an MMORPG. I want, like, more people in my world. I want less invisible walls. I want more of a community in the game, not outside the game. Like, I want more merchants. Like, I want this to feel more realized and less restricted.
The game as a whole feels, I don't want to say unfinished, because
smaller than you
it's very
expect.
polished.
Yeah.
Like, I'll give it that. But it feels like they just intended so much more that they didn't have time for. And I think that, I feel like that's factual. I think that they were just running out of time and had to put a game out.
It feels small to me sometimes.
Yes.
In a way where I don't think it should be. Levels, like, you can look off in the distance and it's expansive, but there's no ability to, like, have an open world.
You can't get there. And the thing is, this game lends itself to a real, like, verticality. But you can't even jump on top of almost anything.
Yeah. And that's infuriating. Like, design your level in a way that I'm just simply not going to be able to get to it or hit it. There's nothing worse than hitting an invisible wall.
For no reason. You're in like this giant warehouse with these like smokestacks up there that you can reach, but you
In
jump
theory.
to it and you hit an invisible wall and just slide down the smokestack.
Yeah.
It's like it's right there. There's no ceiling. There's nothing above me. I can get to it. Just let me up on it.
Well, like I said, design it so that I can't get to the invisible wall in the first place and don't know it's there.
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely feel that. One other very, very quick point. There's no in-game map. And, like, I was doing missions today that was like, patrol the Cosmodrome and look for so-and-so. I didn't know what the Cosmodrome was, so I wound up just driving around until the little thing on my bottom left said Cosmodrome. It turns out it was right next to where I started. I just took the right long way and came all the way around. I wasted like 25 minutes doing nothing.
Actually, my final bitch point will be related to that, which is, given the technology in universe, the ability to just like transport you down anywhere, in theory, you should be able to pick your spawn location on the map.
Yeah, if you just want to roam around, you have to pick patrol, and it dumps you off in the same spot every single time. But so even if you have to go, even if what you want to do is way on the other side of the map, you always have to start in the same spot.
Yeah.
It's awful.
We don't need to necessarily, but did we ever talk about public events?
I don't know.
Do you want to?
Real quick.
Public events occur. Well, I mean, they're constantly occurring all over all of the maps. But I'd say about every 45 minutes.
Yeah, I think they're on an hour timer.
Something like that. And they're randomly occurring, semi-randomly occurring events. There's a whole, and it's like a quick little mission. Like, there's a really strong guy, everybody's going to go team up and kill him. There's a tank, we're going to go destroy it. There's an objective that you have to protect. And there's like waves of guys that might come at you, things like that. The rewards for that are pretty good considering the investment of time.
Yeah.
It's frustrating that you never really know when they're going to happen.
It's cool.
Like the sky darkens, and then
Yeah.
there's a marker on your map to go to it, and guardians will kind of come from all over.
It's fun to
do
watch
it.
people like come out of the woodwork from whatever they were doing to like come help you with this event. However, if there's nobody else around you, sometimes they're really difficult,
Yeah.
and you're just stuck. You just can't do them, and that's sort of frustrating.
So that's kind of a wonky point to end on.
No, I got one good ending point.
All right.
Is Destiny good?
It's fun, but I've been trying to think about why, and I'm having a hard time like quantifying this.
I don't know if Destiny is fun though. Destiny is an incredibly competent game. I'll talk myself through this, and then maybe you'll come to what point you want to make. Destiny is an incredibly competent game. Everything about it feels good, looks good, plays good. It acts the way you want a video game to play. However, it's very chore-like. And if you want to stay relevant, you have to do all the chores. Otherwise, your character is going to be irrelevant, and you can't do any stuff if you ever want to come back to it.
But there's a difference between good and fun.
Yeah.
Like I mentioned earlier, Destiny is sort of like death by 1,000 cuts. Like there's 1,000 annoyances, but it's at the end of the day, we still have been playing it for over 100 hours. That's a lot of gameplay.
But I've gotten to the point with my Destiny playing where I listen to podcasts while I play Destiny, which essentially is saying I need to entertain myself while I'm playing my entertainment.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's got to be a real detriment to the game. And I know a lot of people who do that. They just like listen to music. Or the other day I was watching a League of Legends tournament while I was playing Destiny. It's getting to the point where it's definitely, and I mean I still play it every day, but it's definitely to this point where it feels more like a chore than anything else.
Well, like I mentioned before, the strikes, you can do a level 26 strike a lot more often per week. You can do the level 31 once to get the full rewards from it. And the level cap is 32. So the strikes aren't even at the max level that we can be at now.
Right.
So there's sort of a disconnect with what they allow you to do and what would keep the game relevant and challenging.
I think this game is good. It got me, it took 180 hours before I started to get to that chore point. And that definitely speaks positive. And it's not like we're playing, PvP. You know, we played 300 hours of Battlefield 3, but that was dynamic, 12 on 12 war battles. This, I mean, we're just doing the same stuff over and over again, and I'm still interested in doing those things. I'm gonna leave here. I'm gonna get some ice cream and go home and play Destiny.
I mean, that's a good like value. I mean, that's like 40 cents an hour that we pay to play this game.
Yeah, I've sunk $80 into it.
Yeah, that's like.
And I've played it for I think more than 200 hours. I think I'm at like 250 or something.
I'm not quite sure if it's good or if it's bad, but we are still playing it after a very long time. And there's a lot of games that we've played for this podcast and just independent of that we have not played for nearly as long.
Yeah, there have been games that I would consider good that we played for like 25 minutes.
And as flawed as this is, like I feel like this is a better game than Battlefield. We played a ton of Battlefield 3. And I mean, maybe that's a whole other discussion. But I feel like the complaints I had with Battlefield felt more fundamental. This is like so many more nitpicky things.
That's actually a very interesting point. The gameplay of Battlefield I find to be significantly better. But the game itself, like the nuts and bolts, were significantly worse. That's interesting. Like Battlefield felt broken half the time.
This doesn't feel broken.
But it felt so much more fun.
Yeah, this doesn't feel broken. It feels small, smaller than it should be.
It feels small. This game feels real small. That's an accurate assessment.
Why don't we leave it at that?
All right. Wait, what?
Why don't we leave the podcast at that before we ramble on any more of these points?
Yeah, no. I agree with that. Next week, we are going to have a general discussion podcast. We're going to talk about some current events, and I think we're going to talk about video game music a little bit as sort of like the general point of discussion. But as a whole, we'll just talk about some interesting things. I want to talk about Hideo Kojima and Konami a little bit. That's something interesting to me.
And we'll probably also touch maybe a little bit on Halo 5 Guardians.
Yep.
Some thoughts.
Or
lack thereof.
So tune in on that, and if you have any topics, any video game topics you'd like to talk about, let us know. I am killagreg. You can find me at killagreg17.
I'm Dan. You can find me at the Polygon1.
You can find us at player2, PLAYRTWO.
And you can find us at player2pressstart.com.
Catch you next time.
Thanks for listening.